Hello, my name is Petra Barnbaum, and I am a current student at Seeker University studying a Master of Secondary Education. My senior subject area is psychology, and I'll be discussing this subject today in regards to curriculum documents and requirements, how literacy, numeracy, and ICT will be included in lessons, assessment requirements, and specific learning activities. I will first discuss what psychology is and what students can gain from taking the subject in their senior schooling. Psychology is a part of the science discipline and it involves the study of human behavior. Essentially, psychology aims to explain why humans think the way they think, do the things they do, and feel the things they feel. Psychology explores human behavior through many different lenses, including cognitive, evolutionary, neuroscientific, biological, psychosocial, cultural, behavioral, humanistic, and psychodynamic. Through learning about psychology, students can learn more about their own behavior and the behaviors of the people around them. Psychology also allows students to gain a better insight into the intricate inner workings of their minds and brains. Psychology is so important because it interacts with everything we sense, everything we feel, and everything we do. It is easier to interact with others and to control your own emotions and behaviors if you can understand the processes behind said emotions and behaviors. The study of psychology can also lead to many great and varied careers, including clinical psychology, forensic and courtroom psychology, social work and rehabilitation, welfare and counseling, and justice services. On this next slide, you can see some of the salaries of careers in psychology, as well as what education is needed to obtain these roles. Psychology in high school is a senior subject located within the general senior secondary sciences. As psychology is a general rather than applied subject, students who study psychology in senior school will have their results contribute to their Queensland Certificate of Education, or QCE, and their results may contribute to an Australian Tertiary Admission Rank, or ATAR. Psychology also includes both internal and external assessment due to being a general subject. Up to 4 QCE credits are available for this subject. Throughout the 2 years that students study psychology in high school, they will learn about things like individual development, behavior and thinking, and the influence of others. These topics will give students a better insight into themselves and how others can influence their decisions, thoughts, and behaviors. Psychology is separated into 4 separate units. Units 1 and 2 will prepare students for the content and assessments in Units 3 and 4. Each unit will cover 2 terms of schooling, so Unit 1 will cover terms 1 and 2 in grade 11, and Unit 3 will cover terms 1 and 2 in grade 12. Over the 2 units covering grade 11, students will complete 2 to 4 formative internal assessments. Over the 2 units covering grade 12, students will complete 3 summative internal assessments and 1 summative external examination. All formative pieces of assessment in grade 11 should prepare students for the summative assessments in grade 12. To successfully undertake psychology as a senior subject, students should have passing grades in general science from previous school years. This is because the Prep to 10 science curriculum is assumed knowledge for this subject. As a senior subject, psychology is underpinned by 3 essential skill sets: literacy, numeracy, and 21st century skills. To succeed in psychology, students should meet the minimum standards for these essential skill sets, as each is necessary to achieve success in a senior subject. Literacy is an essential skill for psychology, as throughout the subject, students must use this skill constantly. Literacy skills are vital for learning, comprehending, and using scientific vocabulary, especially vocabulary of a psychological nature. Literacy skills are also essential when students are comprehending and analyzing subject-specific texts, such as research reports and the DCSM. Students must also use their literacy skills when writing essays and reports in order to use appropriate language, formatting, and basic punctuation, grammar, and spelling in their work. Numeracy skills are essential in psychology, mainly when students are working with statistics. Statistics are an important component in the subject of psychology as they underpin the results sections of psychological reports and experiments. To achieve success in this subject, students must be able to collect and input data from experiments, manipulate and analyze the collected data, and then interpret and present said data for a wider audience. Students must also be able to analyze and interpret data from other people's experiments and reports, and must be able to comprehend the results sections of psychological reports and papers in general. ICT is used in psychology mostly in conjunction with the numeracy components of the course. Students must be able to use Excel and other data spreadsheets to input and analyze data. Other ICT skills required include the ability for students to research using online databases, the ability for students to complete and create online surveys, and the ability for students to use and test online measurement tools. I will be discussing 3 specific psychology learning activities that can be done with the senior class. These learning activities will be separated into learning about a historical experiment, learning about learning a psychological concept, and learning how to use the scientific method. The ash line experiment was an experiment that took place in 1951 and focused on understanding conformity and its effects. In the original experiment, a group of men were told that they were part of a vision test. In reality, only one man in the group was a volunteer, while the rest of the group was made up of Confederates. To teach high school students about this historical experiment, I would recreate it in the classroom using my own Confederates. In my experiment, however, I would get one half of the class to recreate the original experiment, while the other half would do the experiment using only 1 to 2 Confederates. The experiment involves showing the group of volunteers and Confederates 3 lines in a group next to one test line. The group must then answer which of the 3 grouped lines, A, B, or C, match the test line in length. The Confederates in both groups purposefully all answer the same wrong line. The new version of the experiment would test the effects of a vocal minority on volunteer answers. In my second activity, I aim to teach my students about a psychological concept known as an echo chamber. Echo chambers are a phenomenon in which people, usually in an online format, associate only with other people that share their views. The effects of an echo chamber include people in said echo chamber only hearing messages that confirm their own attitudes and beliefs. To teach students about echo chambers and their effects, I would first split the class into people who like dogs more and people who like cats more, or a different but equally trivial separation. I would then ask students to get into pairs or groups of people who pick the same pet as themselves. The students would then be asked to debate which animal is better, cats or dogs. After they have done this, I would ask the students if they have changed their minds at all about which animal is better from the start of the lesson. I would then get students to get into pairs or groups with a mix of cat people and dog people. They will then be asked to once again debate which animal is better. After they have done this, I will ask if students change their minds this time around. I'll then explain that the first group or pair that they were in demonstrates an echo chamber and its effects, and that it is better to have many different points of view contribute to discussion than to only interact with people who share the same attitudes and beliefs as yourself. For my third activity, I aim to teach students about the scientific method and how to follow it. I would get students to get into groups and perform simple correlation experiments such as measuring and recording people's height and shoe size, or recording people's eye and hair color. Through these simple experiments, students will be following the scientific method and creating a simple scientific report. After students have gotten the hang of the scientific method in its simplest form, I will get students to conduct more complicated experiments, such as testing people's short-term memory, or testing the effects of different genres of movie on people's pulses. The assessment portion of Units 1 and 2, aka Grade 11, in psychology comprises of 2 to 4 formative internal assessments. These assessments are to be created for the purpose of reviewing current student knowledge and preparing students for the summative assessments of Units 3 and 4. The assessment portion of Units 3 and 4, aka Grade 12, comprise of 4 summative assessments, including an internal data test worth 10% of student marks, an internal student experiment worth 20% of student marks, an internal research investigation worth 20% of student marks, and finally, an external examination worth 50% of student marks. Overall, I believe that the psychology senior syllabus provides a good introduction to the field of psychology for high school students. Despite the fact that psychology as a field is enormous and made up of many varied and specific subfields, such as social psychology and abnormal psychology, and despite the fact that these subfields are often vastly different to each other, for example, cultural psychology versus neuroscience, the syllabus does a good job of showing off how vast the field of psychology is, while also giving students a small taste of different subfields and topics, such as intelligence, memory, emotion, and cross-cultural psychology. However, while the content portion of the syllabus reflects the enormous diversity in psychology topics and subfields, the assessment portion of the syllabus focuses only on research psychology and statistics. The summative assessment for psychology students involves completing the data tests, experiments, and investigations, which are all important aspects of research psychology. Research psychology is a vital piece of psychology as a whole, but that's the problem. It's just a piece. I believe that the summative assessment task for grade 12 should more appropriately reflect the diversity of psychological science. Psychology graduates who go into counseling fields or into clinical psychology, welfare, or rehabilitation will not be frequently undertaking research reports or experiments. Perhaps an essay task along the lines of a literature review or case study could be a useful addition to the current list of assessment tasks. For students to achieve success in any senior subject, it is essential that they receive parental or guardian support. The best thing parents or guardians can do to assist their child with their schooling is to encourage a love of learning at home. Parents and guardians can also help students by discussing what was learned at home, showing interest in their child's work and achievements, and even by watching and reading subject-specific documentaries and books at home with students. Some good psychology documentaries or shows to watch at home include things like Brain Games and The Secret Life of the Brain. Some good psychology books to read at home include things like The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat and The Psychopath Test. Continuing to learn at home is a great way for students to improve their academic prospects both in and out of the classroom. Thank you for listening to my review and critique of the current psychology senior syllabus.